My name is Rowan Hart, and I'm 33 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago to describe my life, I would have said it was solid, not glamorous, not tragic, just steady in a way I'd clawed my way toward. One spreadsheet, one late night, one promotion at a time. I had my own condo, a job I was good at, a mother I adored, and tried to help whenever I could. And until about 6 months ago, I had a fiance I truly believed I was building a future with. His name was Gavin Reed. He was 30 and worked in wealth management. The kind of job where your phone never really stops buzzing, where just one more showing can mean missing dinner entirely. When we met through a mutual friend at a dinner party, he was charming and quick and talked about building wealth and securing the future with this almost evangelical glow. At first, I found it impressive, ambitious. I grew up watching my mom juggle 2 jobs, so the idea of someone who thought strategically about money and stability felt safe. For a while, I mistook calculating for responsible. We'd been together 5 years, engaged for 10 months, wedding date set for May, Pinterest board, venue, deposit, dress, appointments, the whole thing. If you glanced at my life from the outside, you'd think I was one of those women who had it all figured out. But the thing about cracks is, they rarely look like cracks in the beginning. Sometimes they look like your fiancé smiling too hard when you say the word million. The insurance conversation happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd just gotten home from work, kicked off my heels by the door, and dropped my bag on the counter. My email had pinged all afternoon with HR notifications from my promotion, salary bump, bonus structure, and a new, more generous benefits package, including a life insurance policy. I was scrolling through the details on my laptop while Gavin sat on the couch glued to his phone, half watching some house-flipping show on mute. "Hey," I said, still reading. "I need to update my beneficiary info on the new life insurance policy." He didn't look up. "Yeah, how much is it?" "Not, are you okay? Do you feel weird thinking about life insurance?" "Just how much?" "1.5 million, I said. His head snapped up. 1.5 million. I nodded. "That's the face value." "Yeah." He put his phone down slowly, like he was afraid if he moved too fast it might vanish. "Who's your beneficiary right now?" "My mom," I said. "Has been since my first policy years ago. I've never updated it." Gavin frowned. "You need to change that." "I was planning to," I said. "I just have to figure out how to split it." I was thinking half to you, half to her. He laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It had an edge to it, like he'd heard a bad joke. "Half. Why would you split it?" I blinked. "Because my mom basically carried me through college and the years I was making pennies. It feels right to take care of her." "Your mom is fine," he said, waving a hand. "She has her own retirement. We're getting married in 6 months, Rowan. I should be the primary beneficiary." Primary sounded strangely loud in the quiet apartment. I closed my laptop. "Primary means everything goes to you, Gavin. My mom wouldn't get anything." "Exactly." He stood, walked over, and leaned on the back of my chair. "What's the point of marrying you if I'm not protected? If something happens to you, I need to be secure. That's what marriage is about." I stared at the veins in his hand, the way they stood out when he was worked up. "I thought marriage was about love, partnership," I said. "The money is secondary." "Don't be naive," he said softly. "Money is part of it. If you're not willing to put me first financially, then what are we even doing? So if I don't make you the sole beneficiary, you won't marry me?" I asked. "I'm saying it shows where your priorities are," he replied. "Me or your mommy?" The way he said mommy made something inside me go cold. I was tired. It had been a long day. My brain was still buzzing from performance reviews and strategy meetings. I didn't want an argument on top of that. "Fine," I said eventually, the word tasting like metal. "I'll make you the primary beneficiary." His face lit up. "Really?" "Yeah, I'll get the forms tomorrow." He kissed my cheek. "Thank you, baby. This is what partners do. They protect each other." I nodded, but I didn't trust myself to say anything. I was afraid something honest might slip out. That night, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to Gavin's breathing beside me as he scrolled through his phone, the blue glow flickering across the bedroom. When he finally fell asleep, I slid out of bed and padded barefoot to my small home office. The glow from my monitor was harsh in the dark room as I logged into the insurance portal. If I was going to hand someone the keys to a $1.5 million policy, I wanted to know exactly what I was signing. The forms were straightforward enough at first. Policyholder information coverage amount, primary beneficiary percentage distribution. But further down in smaller print, I saw a section I hadn't paid attention to before. Contingent beneficiary, the person who gets the money if the primary beneficiary dies before you or at the same time. I kept scrolling. There it was, a clause about contestability and misrepresentation. Language about what happened if a beneficiary was found to have contributed to the policyholder's death or engaged in fraud or coercion. The company reserves the right to void, reassign, or redirect benefits if... I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding a little faster, not because I thought Gavin was plotting anything, but because for the first time the idea didn't feel ridiculous. I could still hear his voice in my head. What's the point of marrying you if I'm not protected? Half why would you split it? Me or your mommy? People say scary, careless things when they're emotional, but something about the way his entire demeanor had changed when he heard 1.5 million hadn't felt emotional. It had felt calculated. I took a slow breath. Okay, Rowan, I whispered to myself. If he wants you to be practical, be practical. I filled out the form. I put Gavin Reed as the primary beneficiary 100% just like he wanted. In the contingent beneficiary section, I typed my mother's full name and address. Then, in the additional notes field, I added a request that annual policy review letters be sent to both the primary and contingent beneficiaries each year. If anyone was going to be informed, it would be the two people who stood to lose or gain the most. I reviewed everything one last time, my cursor hovering over the submit button. My chest felt tight in that way it does when your instincts are tugging on your sleeve and you're ignoring them on purpose. Then I hit submit. The next evening, Gavin asked about it the second I walked through the door. Did you update the insurance? He called from the kitchen where he was pouring himself a drink. Yeah, I said, dropping my bag on the counter. You're the primary beneficiary. All of it, he asked. All of it, I confirmed. He smiled wide. Good. That's how it should be. He said it like we'd just completed some romantic milestone, like I'd given him a key to my heart, not potential access to a 7-figure payout if I died. For the next few weeks, he talked about it constantly at dinners with friends, casual drinks, even at an open house where I tagged along for company. Yeah, Rowan put me as the primary beneficiary on her life insurance. He'd say, arm draped over my shoulders, $1.5 million. That's how you know someone's serious about you. Everyone would laugh or whistle or make some joke about marrying up. I'd smile because that's what was expected. But inside, each mention scraped a little more skin off the part of me that still believed he loved me first and the policy second. One night at a bar, when he repeated the story for the third time to a near stranger, I watched his face instead of listening to his words. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at their reaction, the impressed nods, the envy, the way they sized him up as someone smart enough to secure a good deal. That was the first night I had the thought I couldn't shake. If there were a million reasons to marry me, how many of his were actually about me? I didn't say anything. I just watched and waited. The letter showed up on a Thursday in September. I wasn't home when the mail came. I was in a conference room arguing gently about Q4 budgets, while my manager drew boxes and arrows on a whiteboard. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down and saw Gavin's name. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Sorry, I said to my manager. I just need to check this quickly. I stepped into the hallway and answered. Hey, what's up? Some mail came for you, he said. His voice had that forced casual tone he used when he was trying to sound relaxed. Official-looking stuff from the insurance company. My heartbeat picked up a little. What does it say? Annual policy review, he read. And there's one for me. A pause. And one for your mom. I leaned against the wall. That meant the company had processed my note exactly the way I'd asked. Oh, I said. Yeah, they send those to all beneficiaries. To all? Why would they send one to your mom? There it was. The edge. She's listed as contingent beneficiary, I said, keeping my voice even. If you die before me or at the same time, she gets it instead. Silence. I could practically hear him blinking. Contingent, he repeated slowly. Yeah, it just means you're first in line. She's backup. So your mom gets nothing unless I'm dead, he clarified. Correct. A beep. Then he let out a breath. Oh, okay. That's fine then. There it was again. That little calculation happening in real time. He wasn't upset that my mom was involved at all. He was only concerned about her competing with him. I stared at the opposite wall where someone had taped up a poster about workplace wellness and hydration, and felt like I was standing in two lives at once. The one where I was a rational adult managing policies, and the one where I was the prize in someone else's cost-benefit analysis. They just want everyone to understand the policy, I added, pushing words out because the silence felt heavy. Standard review stuff, right? He said quickly. We'll look at it later. You busy? I'm in a meeting, I said. I'll call you tonight. Okay. Love you. Love you too, I said automatically, even as something inside me folded its arms and refused to move. That evening, I sat at the dining table with both letters laid out in front of me. Gavin's envelope was already open, creased at the edges like he'd gripped it too tightly. My mom's was still sealed. I'd stopped by her place after work and dropped it off. Gavin hovered in the kitchen, pretending to scroll his phone. He wasn't really reading. He was watching me. So he asked. They're just confirming coverage, I said, scanning the text. Face amount, premiums, current beneficiaries. I took my time on the second page. The policy breakdown was more detailed than the original letter I'd seen months ago. My request for additional educational materials clearly hadn't been ignored. There it was again, in bolder language this time. If a beneficiary is found to have contributed to the policyholder's death or engaged in fraud, coercion, or criminal activity related to this policy, the company reserves the right to void, reassign, or redirect benefits. I felt Gavin's presence at my shoulder before I saw him. He leaned in, pretending to read along, his hand brushing my chair. What's that section about? He asked. It's standard fraud and contestability language, I said. It's in every life insurance policy. They remind beneficiaries every year so no one can claim they didn't know. He made a small sound in his throat, somewhere between a scoff and a swallow. Kind of dramatic. People do dramatic things for money, I said quietly. He didn't reply. My mom called later that night just as I was brushing my teeth. Honey, I got a letter from your insurance company, she said. I thought maybe it was a mistake. It's not, I said, wiping toothpaste from my chin. You're listed as contingent beneficiary now. They send you updates so you know where things stand. That's very sweet, she said. But her voice softened. Why am I reading paragraphs about fraud and investigation? And Rowan, is everything okay? I stared at my reflection, at the faint lines around my eyes, the way my mouth seemed to settle into a straight line now instead of a natural smile. I'm okay, I said. I'm just being cautious about what she asked gently. So I told her about the Tuesday night conversation about how Gavin had asked how much the policy was, before asking anything else, how he'd insisted on being sole primary beneficiary and sneered at the idea of my mom getting anything. How he'd been parading the story around to anyone who'd listened like my life had become a bragging right. On the other end of the line, my mom was quiet for a long time. That's concerning, she said finally. I know. What are you going to do? I looked toward the living room where Gavin was sitting on the couch, TV light flickering over his face as he scrolled his phone. He looked to anyone else like a man winding down after a long day. To me, he looked like a stranger wearing a familiar face. I'm still figuring that out, I said. But I wanted you to be informed. If anything ever happens to me, I want you to know exactly what the situation is. No surprises? She sighed softly. I don't like this, Rowan. I don't like that you're in a relationship where you're reading the fine print to protect yourself from your own fiancé. Neither do I admitted. Trust your instincts, she said. You've always had good instincts. Don't talk yourself out of what you already know. I stared at the TV from the hallway at Gavin laughing at something on his phone. Yeah, I whispered. I won't. The rooftop party was 2 weeks later. It was for Gavin's friend Liz's birthday. Expensive downtown bar string lights, curated playlists, the kind of place where every angle was designed for photos. The air smelled like perfume and citrus, and the faint metallic tang of money. Gavin came alive in places like this. He greeted everyone with a hug or a handshake, steering me gently by the small of my back, like I was an accessory he was proud to show off. "This is Rowan," he told someone near the bar. "My fiancée, she's a genius with numbers." And he added with a laugh, "She finally put me as primary on her $1.5 million life insurance. That's how you know it's real, right?" The group laughed. Someone clinked their glass against his. "That's how you secure the bag, man," one of the guys joked. I smiled because that's what you do when people say things like that. I laughed lightly, like it didn't hit me like a slap every time. Inside, something shrank. Later, around 10:00, Liz pulled me aside near a potted plant, her metallic dress catching the light. She looked nervous, like she'd rehearsed this in the bathroom mirror. "Can I talk to you for a second?" she asked. "Sure," I said, my stomach tightening. We stepped away from the crowd into a slightly quieter corner where the music was a little softer and the city noise floated up from below. "I don't know if I should say this," she began, twisting her straw wrapper, "but I'd want someone to say it to me." "That's usually a sign you should say it," I said, forcing a small grin. She gave me a sad smile. "Gavin's been saying some weird stuff about you," she said. "About money." My grip tightened around my glass. "Like what he keeps talking about, how once you're married, he's set for life." She winced as she said it. "He jokes that even if things go south, he'll be taken care of. He keeps mentioning the life insurance, your assets, how you make enough for both of them." She put air quotes around the last part. I stared at her, the rooftop tilting just slightly under my feet. "He said that to you." "To me and some of the others," she said quickly. "We were at brunch last week." He laughed and said, "Once the ring is locked in and the paperwork's all signed, I'm good no matter what." Her policy, her salary. She trailed off, grimacing. It didn't sound like a joke. My stomach dropped. "And I know he's your fiancé." Liz added, eyes wide with apology. "Maybe I'm misreading, but it doesn't sound like he's talking about building a life with you. It sounds like he's talking about being taken care of." The worst part wasn't that she was saying it. The worst part was that none of it surprised me. "Thank you," I said finally. My voice sounded quieter than I felt for telling me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I took a breath, then another. "I don't know yet, but I'm glad I know this." Over Liz's shoulder, I could see Gavin holding court with a small group, gesturing with his drink, smiling, that confident, easy smile everyone loved. He looked like the kind of man people trusted with keys and contracts and futures. I suddenly wondered how many of those futures he valued more as numbers than as people. We left the party around midnight. The city lights smeared past the car windows as I drove, my hand steady on the wheel despite the storm in my head. Gavin was tipsy and buoyant in the passenger seat, scrolling through the photos he'd been tagged in. "Liz really outdid herself," he said. "Did you have fun?" "It was fine," I said. "You seemed quiet," he observed. "Just tired. Something like that." He didn't press. "We'll get used to parties like that," he said instead. "Once we're married and we combine our incomes and assets, we'll be throwing our own events, hosting clients, building our network." "Our network," I repeated. "Or yours," he laughed. "What's the difference? We're a team." I didn't answer. I just watched the road unfold in front of me, lane markers sliding by like the thin lines of a contract. Inside, something much quieter than anger settled in. It was the realization that I wasn't paranoid. I'd been right to read the fine print. I'd been right to add a contingent, and I was going to be right to protect myself whether Gavin ever liked it or not. By mid-October, we were supposed to be in the sweet spot of wedding planning, the part where couples laugh over cake tastings and argue playfully about seating charts. Instead, Gavin buried himself in decisions about decor and venues, the way people bury themselves in their phones during awkward elevator rides. He loved the aesthetics, the curated floral arch, the drone photographer, the VIP guest flow. But when I asked about actual married life questions where we'd live long-term budgets, whether we wanted kids, and when he waved them off like gnats, "We'll figure that out after the wedding," he said once, as if the wedding were the finish line, not the starting point. On the surface, we still looked like a functioning couple, but inside, I felt like I was dating a man who'd traded partnership for performance. One night, I was in my home office, glasses on, the blue-white light of spreadsheets reflecting off my face. I was deep in projections for next quarter when Gavin knocked lightly and stepped in. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, wearing that casual half-smirk he thought was charming. "Hey," he said. "I was thinking you should increase your life insurance." I paused mid-typing, slowly turned in my chair. "Increase it?" "Yeah." He walked in, settling onto the edge of my desk like he owned the space. "$1 million isn't that much anymore with inflation and everything. You should bump it to like $3 million. Maybe $4 million. He said it like he was suggesting I switch from oat milk to almond milk. "That would raise premiums," I said carefully. "It's an investment." He shrugged. "In our future, your security," I clarified. "Our security," he said. "Same thing. It's really not." His expression tightened. "Why are you being difficult about this?" "I'm not," I said. "I just want to understand why you're so focused on money tied to my death." He scoffed. "Oh my God. Rowan, don't be dramatic." "Then tell me," I said. "Explain your logic." He shifted, growing impatient. "Because I'm thinking ahead, because I'm being practical. Someone has to be." I set my pen down. My voice came out calm. Too calm. "Gavin, do you ever think about our life together in ways that don't involve money?" "Of course I do," he snapped. "Name one thing." He opened his mouth, closed it, thought. Nothing came out. The silence lasted long enough to make the air feel heavy. Finally, he said, "I'm looking forward to building a home with you." "A home," I repeated. "Or a house you can post on Instagram." That struck something. His jaw clenched. "Why are you being such an..." He said, "Because I'm trying to understand why every single conversation about our future is about what you gain financially. You're twisting things." "Am I?" I asked softly. He stood abruptly and stormed out, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to rattle the frame. I sat there staring at the door, realizing that wasn't anger I'd felt. It was clarity. The next morning, Gavin acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, talked about a new wedding venue he liked, scrolled through centerpiece inspiration. But something had shifted in the way he avoided my eyes, like he was performing normalcy, not living in it. I played along for now. November arrived with a fresh chill, and so did the next set of policy review letters. 2 thick envelopes, one to Gavin, one to my mom, were waiting in the mailbox when I got home. I carried them inside, feeling the weight of them like stones in my purse. Gavin was standing in the kitchen, holding his letter with both hands. His face was pale. "What is this?" he demanded the second I stepped inside. "What's what this?" He jabbed a finger at the paper like it had personally offended him. "This section about fraud and contestability. It says if a beneficiary is found to have engaged in fraud or contributed to the policyholder's death, the policy can be voided." "Yes," I said. "That's standard language. You didn't tell me this was in here." "It was in the original documents," I said. "You never read them." "This changes everything." The words were out before he could stop them. Silence stretched. I watched the realization hit his face, the understanding that he'd said too much. He scrambled. "I just mean, I didn't realize there were conditions attached." "There are always conditions," I said quietly. He swallowed, eyes darting back to the page. "So what does this mean practically?" "It means," I said, "that you would have to be completely uninvolved in anything harmful. Even suspicious behavior could void the payout. It protects policyholders." His throat bobbed. "That's..." "What is nothing?" he snapped. "Forget it." He crumpled the letter slightly in his fist as he left the room. Minutes later, I heard him in the bedroom on the phone. His voice was low, agitated, urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard the panic, the realization that the money wasn't guaranteed. Later that night, after he'd retreated to bed early, I opened my laptop and reread the insurer's email confirming that the updated review letters included additional educational materials exactly as I'd asked. Gavin had called this clause. I called it peace of mind. My phone buzzed. Mom again. Honey, she said, I read this new letter. There's even more detail about investigations and fraud. It's unsettling. I know, I said. Rowan, has Gavin done something or said something that makes you worry? I took a breath. Not directly, but I'm starting to think he might, if given the chance. A long pause. I could almost picture her pressing her lips together the way she does when she's afraid of saying too much. I don't like this, she said finally. I don't like that you're reading insurance letters like they're smoke alarms. Me neither, I murmured. What are you going to do? For the first time, I knew the answer. I'm preparing, I said quietly, because by now the truth was no longer hiding. It was sitting on my couch, pretending everything was fine and calculating the ROI of being engaged to me. And I had no intention of walking into a marriage with someone who loved the payout more than the person it came from. December arrived the way cold air does, quietly at first, then suddenly everywhere. Wedding RSVPs dripped into our inbox. Floral vendors emailed reminders. Deposits cleared. From the outside, Gavin and I looked like a couple gliding toward May with confidence. Inside, it felt like we were performing in a play neither of us believed in anymore. Gavin focused obsessively on surface-level things: the tablescape, the guest list, the monogrammed seating tags, anything that photographed well. I focused on breathing and waiting because I knew something was coming. Something that would break the thin, brittle shell we were both pretending was still a relationship. It arrived at dinner with Gavin's family. His parents lived in an upscale suburb with white-trimmed windows and lawns that looked perpetually groomed, the kind of house Gavin saw as aspirational. We sat around their dining table, passing roasted vegetables and talking about wedding preparations. His mother gushed over dresses. His younger sister Mia asked about bridesmaids. Gavin played the role of the doting fiancé, holding my hand under the table when his parents were looking. It felt like borrowing someone else's life. Then his father cleared his throat. So, he said, cutting into his steak, have you two talked about a prenup? The utensil noise stopped. Gavin's fork hovered midair just long enough for his mother to glance at him. No, Gavin said quickly. We don't need anything like that. We trust each other. His father nodded slowly, unfazed. Trust is important, but you're both adults bringing assets into the marriage. Prenups protect both parties. We don't need it. Gavin repeated, his tone just slightly too sharp. His father turned to me. What do you think, Rowan? Every eye pivoted to me. I let myself breathe for one extra second before answering. I think, I said calmly, it's worth discussing. It only protects us both. Nothing more. The air shifted. Gavin shot me a look so swift, so sharp, it might as well have been a blade slipped under the tablecloth. His mother stiffened. His sister blinked at her plate. Maybe I added lightly to soften the blow. After dinner, we can talk about it privately. No pressure, but the damage was done. The moment registered in every face around the table. Trust money lines drawn where no one else had expected any. Dinner resumed politely, but the warmth never returned. Gavin didn't touch my hand again. The car ride home was silent. Not tired silence, not contemplative silence, weaponized silence. His jaw clenched, his thumbs tapped against the steering wheel. He stared straight ahead as if the road had personally offended him. When we finally pulled into the parking garage, he shut off the engine and sat rigidly. Are you kidding me? He said at last, voice trembling with restrained fury. What part? I asked quietly. A prenup. He turned to me, eyes bright with anger. After everything, after the policy, after all the conversations we've had. A prenup protects us both, I said. It just puts everything in writing. You think I'm after your money? He snapped. I didn't answer because silence is its own kind of truth. His face twisted. Unbelievable. We took the elevator up to our apartment. The moment the door closed behind us, the real explosion started. Where the hell did that come from? Gavin shouted. You want to protect yourself from me? From me? After all the ways I've supported us, after planning this entire wedding, my assets are at risk too. I said, my career, my savings, my policy. It's responsible to have clarity. No, he barked. No. What's responsible is trusting the person you're about to marry, but you clearly don't trust me. I stared at him, feeling strangely calm. Do you trust me? Of course I do, he said. You're the one creating problems where there aren't any. Gavin, I asked softly, why did the fraud clause in the insurance letter upset you? He froze. What you said? It changed everything. Why? His mouth opened, then closed. His throat worked like he was swallowing something bitter. I didn't mean it like that, he said finally. You're twisting my words. I'm quoting your words. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. This is insane. You're acting paranoid. Why are you doing this? Because every single conversation about our future revolves around money. My money. That's not fair, isn't it? You told your friends you'd be set for life once we got married. Liz told me. He stopped pacing. She had no right. She had every right, I interrupted. Because she cares enough to worry. Gavin's face reddened. She's exaggerating. She always exaggerates. Really? I asked. What about the night you asked me to increase the policy to $3 million? That was practical? I finished for him. Yes, you said that. But you couldn't name a single thing about marriage that didn't involve wealth. His eyes flashed. You're destroying this. You're sabotaging us. No, I said I'm seeing us clearly. Silence stretched so long it hummed. Then I said the words that ended everything. If you don't want a prenup, I don't think we should get married. He stared at me, stunned. You're threatening to break up with me over paperwork? I'm setting a boundary, I said. If you refuse it, we're not aligned. He laughed. Not a joyful laugh, a sharp, disbelieving bark. If you insist on a prenup, he said slowly, I can't marry you. I nodded once. Okay. His expression collapsed. What I said? Okay, I repeated. We won't get married. A beat of stunned silence. Then you don't mean that, he hissed. You're making a point. So are you, I said. I'm just respecting it. His voice cracked with rage. You can't do this. We have a wedding in 4 months. Everything's paid for. Better to lose deposits? I said gently, than lose myself. He stared at me, breathing hard. I love you, he whispered. I looked at him. Maybe you do, I said softly. But you love the security more. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, I said, grabbing my keys. You can pack in the morning. Keep the ring. Sell it. I don't care. Please don't do this, he said, voice cracking. It's already done. I walked out. For the first time in months, when the door clicked shut behind me, the sound felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The weeks after the breakup didn't feel like heartbreak. They felt like cleanup. Vendor emails, cancellation fees, sympathy from some guests, shade from others. Gavin's mother left me a furious 3-minute voicemail accusing me of using her son for status and destroying his life's trajectory. His sister unfollowed me on Instagram. His friends posted vague quotes about betrayal. I didn't respond to any of it, but the one message I did save was from his father. I understand. Take care of yourself. It was the only one grounded in reality. Gavin moved out the week after Christmas. He packed quietly, angrily left his key on the counter, didn't say goodbye. I watched from the hallway as he carried the last box to his car shoulders, tense face set in that tight way he wore when he'd rather explode than cry. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flash of grief for the future I thought we were building. The vacations, the house, the life where I didn't have to second-guess the man beside me. Then I remembered Liz's voice. He talks like he's being taken care of, not like he's building a life with you. And the grief passed. When January came, a single letter from the insurance company arrived addressed to my mother, not to Gavin. I'd already updated the policy in December. Quietly, cleanly, primary beneficiary reinstated. My mom. Gavin removed completely. My mom called as soon as she opened it. You changed it back, she said, relief softening her voice. I did. I'm glad. she said then gently. How are you doing? I thought about the answer. About the quiet of my apartment, about the lack of tension in my chest, about how food tasted better, how sleep came easier. I'm better than I've been in a long time, I said truthfully. I'm glad you got out, she said. I was scared you'd talk yourself into staying. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. I was scared of that too. Later that month, I sat in my attorney's office updating my will. A middle-aged woman with silver hair and soft hands, she reviewed my documents and asked, "Any conditions you want to add for future spouses?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "Any future husband must sign a prenup. And any future life insurance beneficiary must be fully informed of all policy terms before being added." My lawyer smiled faintly. "Sounds like you've learned something." I let out a quiet laugh. I learned the fine print matters. By February, the dust had settled. I heard through mutual friends that Gavin was dating someone new, a finance woman he'd met at a development mixer. It fit? I hoped genuinely that he found whatever stability he'd been chasing. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of him I'd invented. But that version had never really existed. Early March, I went to a friend's casual game night. Board games, wine, mismatched socks. The kind of evening that feels like a warm blanket. That's where I met Lucas Bennett, a history professor with warm eyes and a soft laugh. We ended up paired for a team round of charades. I was terrible. He was worse. By the end, we were laughing so hard the others told us we were ruining the game. We started dating. On our third date at a little Italian place with candles and wine bottles, I awkwardly brought up life insurance because how do you explain that you used to be engaged to a man who treated your life like a retirement plan? I cleared my throat. I should tell you something about me. I'm particular about financial boundaries, prenups, beneficiary disclosures, all that. Lucas blinked. Okay, why? So I explained simply without bitterness. When I finished, he leaned back, eyebrows raised. That's a weird thing to bring up this early, he said. My stomach dropped until he smiled. But he continued. I get it. You've lived through something that made you careful. I respect that. He picked up his fork. And for the record, your money is yours. Your policies are yours. I don't need any of that. I like you because you quote spreadsheets the way my students quote Taylor Swift. I laughed genuinely for the first time in what felt like years. He didn't see me as an asset or a payout or a safety net. He saw me. A few weeks later, scrolling through social media, I saw a photo of Gavin kneeling in front of his new girlfriend. Huge ring skyline backdrop. Caption full of buzzwords. Building security. Future stability. Set for life. Same script, different stage. Same man. I stared for a moment, then kept scrolling. Some people learn, some people don't. The wedding Gavin and I had planned was supposed to be this month, May. Instead, I'm planning a long weekend trip with my mom and Lucas. Somewhere warm, somewhere light, somewhere. The only plan is to breathe. Before packing, I opened the drawer where I kept a small folder labeled Lessons Learned. Inside were all the annual review letters, the ones that had peeled back the truth line by line. I didn't keep them because I was bitter. I kept them because they reminded me of the moment I decided to choose myself. The fine print that saved me. The instincts I finally trusted. The life I could now build honestly, freely, on my own terms. I closed the folder, turned off the light, and walked toward a future that for the first time in a long time felt like mine. Maybe this story touched something inside you, a moment where you felt more like an asset than a partner, or a time you had to read the fine print of your own relationship to find the truth. Financial manipulation can be subtle, hiding behind words like security and future. If you've ever had to trust your gut against someone else's gaslighting, share your thoughts or your own experience in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from so I can create more stories just for you.